And welcome to the weekly review here on Teachers Talk Radio. It's stormy weather in the UK and it's stormy in education this week as well. We've got 3 stories for you. We're going to be talking about performance-related pay, recommendations from the Head Teachers Union and the Michaela prayer ban. So we're going to head straight into our first story. And that story is a DFE review to look at scrapping performance-related pay. This was reported in the TES on Monday. The government said that it will conduct a rapid review to clear the way for a replacement from the 1st of September. Now, some of this does come after the School Teachers Review Body last year recommended that the existing obligation on schools to operate performance-related pay progression should be withdrawn pending further work, and calls from the education unions that the requirement be withdrawn. So, performance-related pay. We're going to go to Lianne first. What are your thoughts on performance-related pay?
I looked at the article, and one of the 2 things that were mentioned was scrapping it shouldn't take away the head teacher's ability to reward their best teachers. So again, we're going to change it, but we're still giving out rewards to our top achieving teachers. Never mind which class you have, never mind the ability of your class. What is a best teacher? It kind of goes back to Ofsted rewarding one-word gradings, and then a rapid government review. Everything's changing quickly. Ofsted must change very quickly. We must change performance pay very quickly, and I just think it's a lot of quick change, a lot of maybe not so much consulting of in-classroom teachers that maybe should happen before all these quick changes happen in the industry.
Now, I want to ask Hannah. I personally, and I'll put this out there, I benefited from performance-related pay progression, and I should clarify there, it is progression. It's not performance-related pay. But it did set me up as a young teacher, as very target-driven, very data-driven, not a holistic teacher, as it were. But certainly, I did well by being very cutthroat and business-like, I guess, about my performance. What are your thoughts on performance-related pay, and is it good for teachers?
I think it very much depends on the school and how they see to fit performance-related pay, because I had a similar thing. I was an instructor for 3 years and then got qualified, and when I got my first job out of the school I was instructing in, I didn't think to negotiate my pay up. I just presumed that because I did instructing for 3 years, then got my qualification, that I'd just go on M1, and I was there for 3 years, and then I moved to my new school. And I said, is it possible to kind of move up I at the end of my first year and go up 2 bands instead of 1, because I took the results from -1.15 to +0.86 in the department in 1 year. I rewrote the whole scheme for the whole entire school, every lesson for every year for the whole entire school I rewrote, and completely transformed the department. And I said, look at how I've performed. Well, can I go 2? And it was like, we can't set the precedent that we could skip a teacher up 2, otherwise everyone will expect it. And I was like, but nobody's going to have done the work that I've done. And I thought if I did the work and proved my worth, because originally in the interview they were like, no, but we'll see how you get on. And they were like, no, we can't set that precedent. So I think it very much depended on the school that you're in, and there is that nervousness from schools to be like, oh well, if we do that, then they might get in trouble with kind of favoritism of giving that teacher a pay rise over that one, and how that's measured. So that's the thing. I think I don't know how well it was implemented in the first place.
Certainly, in that fairness across the board. Now, Brent, I remember this coming in, and I remember the unions at the time had concerns around it, and I think there were certainly teachers. The old system for any young teachers out there listening was more of a kind of slow plodding up, and teaching has often been, as Hannah described there, this idea that you put in the work and then maybe you get the reward later somewhere down the line, whether that be promotion or pay progression, but you put in the work first. What are your thoughts on it being in place and then it being got rid of?
I didn't agree with it to begin with. I do believe you need, as a teacher, some achievable targets. The problem was, like everything else, it got corrupted by the privatization of education. What we're talking about is data league tables and the unintended consequences of being basically accountable for a cohort of children, and that your pay is connected to those. I have no control over children's attendance. I've got no control over their family circumstances, the deindustrialization of the area I live in. And sometimes even you have situations where members of staff were giving classes, so other members of staff could, let's just be honest about it, get better data as a result of that. So unfortunately, the system got corrupted very quickly, because at the end of the day, teachers, how can you quantify sometimes the unquantifiable achievements of what teaching really is about? And I think it's another example of trying to standardize something that really needs to be taken in a local context. The best person to judge my performance are the parents, the students, and my immediate community. And I think that's what it should be down to, is my individual performance should be down to my individual line managers, with some set standards, I agree, but making an overarching situation where it could be corrupted like that, where your pay was connected to your performance in the sense of league tables. I signed up to be a teacher, not work in the city of London. I didn't work for targets like that. And I think the majority of teachers are intrinsically motivated. Yes, pay is important to us. I do take your point, Nathan. We do need some progression. People need, if they're really good and they're really fantastic in teaching, we need to progress them a lot quicker. So you need some system to be allowed to do that. But I would suggest to you a lot of schools have unfortunately not sometimes promoted people fast enough, because let's be honest, they haven't had the money to do it. And they've found ways using performance rated pay to sometimes not promote people when they should be. So I think there's a big conversation to be had about it. What the nature of teaching is to start off with, what's our job? What is our actual physical job? What are we responsible for?
I can't hear Nathan.
Thought it was just
sorry.
Me.
Yeah. I want to build on that, Brent, and just come back round everyone and just ask, you talk about, what is our job? How do we judge our job? And certainly that kind of performance in terms of results and tables. So I'm going to come back around for Lianne. When we talk about results, how much responsibility is that, or how much impact is the teacher having on their, say, a class's Progress 8 measures or their Key Stage 2 results, to take the burden of that on what they get paid next year?
I like to think of the difference between responsible and accountable. I think there's a big difference between being responsible for their results and being accountable. You have to be in the right school where leadership give you autonomy to change a little bit the policy of the school to best fit the class you are teaching. And actually, before I was a teacher, I worked in football, and I like to make the analogy that many Saturdays and many Thursday nights, there are footballers that perform badly on the pitch. Do they take a cut in pay? They don't. So why are we doing that to teachers?
And Hannah, your thoughts? We're rightly proud when we do well and talk about our results and all of those things. Are teachers then not taking ownership, I guess, or should they take ownership through their pay for when they don't do as well?
I think it very much depends, especially like on a subject like mine, where necessarily the target grades are based on their kind of English and maths and not necessarily representative. So if you then be like, oh, but you've got to get that kid a 9 because they're really good at maths and English but can't draw, you're in trouble. And then same with, especially with attendance and things like that. If a student has a mental health issue, you don't want to load on them, and because you need your results, because you need your pay. And I think it'll affect people's mental health in terms of the pressure to do it that way. But I do think staff have a representation of being there for the students. If a student's kind of getting 3-4 grades lower in one subject than all their others, then maybe that is a teacher issue and that needs to be addressed. But I don't think it should necessarily be linked to pay.
And Brent, this one for you. I just, I remember my first ever when performance-related pay progression came in. I remember my targets, and I had 3 targets. One of them, of course, data-driven, and this was in primary, so I had to hit my maths, my English, my reading. And I had one that was around my quality of teaching and learning, and that was graded lesson observations at the time. And then I had another one about some curriculum development work. So I had these 3 targets, and if I met or exceeded these 3 targets, I would automatically jump up a certain number of levels or sub-levels. But it was a formula. Can we boil teaching down to this kind of metric of measurement and tick boxing?
No, you can't. You cannot, because you cannot judge. It's like judging a marathon runner on 4 miles, not when he finishes the race. What do we judge our students on? We have them for a period of time. We add a little bit to them, and then somebody else adds a bit to them. I'm not arrogant enough to think that I'm responsible for the students' exam results. I think the evidence shows I'm 0.4%. 0.4, sorry, and when it comes to the impact, less than half a grade is down to potentially the teacher. So what are all the other factors that come into play? The actual individual students themselves, they're their exam results, not my exam results. And I think, unfortunately, what I've seen is overcooking data. And again, it starts in primary school when schools are under pressure in primary schools to inflate their data. Then I get children coming into me, we're expected to get certain levels. And then it's like, you're not a good teacher. This has destroyed some of my colleagues because they were judged inadequate. I had one of my colleagues, a 28-year veteran teacher, who children absolutely worshipped, was destroyed because his data wasn't good enough. And I'm sorry, that is just ruined. What's one of our issues within teaching is that we are a vocational professional. You cannot judge us sometimes on the things we do, because sometimes the things you cannot quantify are the most important things in teaching. And unfortunately, trying to adopt a business model into teaching has utterly failed. Look at the evidence of 14 years of what we currently have of course policies, curriculum, every aspect. Our education system is failing. One aspect of it is trying to boil our job down to some numbers. Quite simply, we are better than that. We are more than that, and we always will be.
And that leaves us just a comment in there from Craig Shelton on X or Twitter. The PRP model does not work. In business, you have a target and may have a few variables. In education, one target's based on results. You have up to 30 variables, and it's never a fair way of rewarding progress. Now, while we are talking about how we judge education, we're going to move on to our next story. Now, just before we get started, of course, I want to say that this show is brought to you in partnership with John Catt Educational, publishing professional development books and resources to support great teaching and learning in schools around the world. Have you checked out their latest releases? Use the code JCTTR2324 for 20% off your order. Don't miss out. Visit johncattbookshop.com to explore their full range of titles and advance your own professional development today. Happy reading. Our next story. The National Association of Head Teachers have put together some recommendations for what should be happening with school inspection. I think we can show them on the screen here. Now, some of those things that they are asking for are removing graded judgments, revising the way that the inspection framework works, extending the notice period, so the time that teachers and schools get to know before they're inspected, separating out the safeguarding checks, having more experienced inspection teams, and this is a really interesting part for me that I'm going to ask some specific questions about, introducing inspection at trust level, and a new complaints procedure. Now, I want to come around first of all to Lianne and just ask this one. On point 5 there, this experienced inspection teams was something that really shocked me, but there currently really isn't much expectation that the people coming in to inspect have experience at the level that they're inspecting. So we might get secondary teachers inspecting early years or in the subjects that they're going in to judge. What do you think specifically about that part and these sort of overall recommendations?
I think it's it's actually the point that I picked out from the story. I think you've got like music teachers coming to inspect primary schools. You've got I don't know, A-level business teachers coming to inspect early years settings. I think if you're open to as an inspector, if you're open to listening to the teachers in the school of why you do it, and then maybe why does it work, maybe it's okay. But I think there are some inspectors that go in with an idea in their head of what it should look like and what they want to see. And if you haven't taught in those areas and in those subjects, not even specialized, but if you haven't taught in them, how can you have a vision of what it should look like?
Yeah, and certainly I think, there are some bits there that we pick out. Early years in particular, I think there are some real misconceptions about how that works, what that should look like, what good teaching practice. And I've seen some people sharing examples on online of conversations they've had?
I think from a primary school teacher, early years is the most specialised year group in primary. And if you go in there having never taught it, having as a high school teacher, never even stepped into a best practice early years classroom, how can you know what you're meant to see? You wouldn't, I don't think.
Hannah, there's some of the parts from this that you welcome, and the bits in there that kind of say yes, that's a part that I'd agree with.
Definitely the extended notice period for schools. I think we all know, if anybody puts on Twitter or X like a picture of a pizza box, anybody know what's coming? Like, it's that late night before everyone's in school, like when we get the call, like, and especially as a parent and a single parent, like getting that call and then having to call family and be like, can somebody pick up my son? Can somebody like have him? Because I'm put him to bed because I'm going to be here till God knows what hour doing this. And the same as like I had when we got inspected last year, and I had all my year 11s. They were in school and after school club when we got the call, and kind of I didn't have time to be able to cancel them and then get contact with all their parents. So they, bless them, were just like watching me run around my classroom like a headless chicken. And because we live very close to them, one of the kids actually went and got McDonald's and bought it back after school for me, and was like, "Miss, like we were worried about you." But it is that kind of to get everything ready to be able to present is different to a normal school day. So you need to give the staff enough time to be able to do that, and in their normal working hours, because we didn't get paid to stay late to prep everything for Ofsted. We didn't get paid to pay other people to look after our children to be able to stay late. And I think it's that again comes into that kind of mental health for teachers and protecting them and making sure it isn't this massive pressure. It's something that you can prepare for in a normal week with your normal classes without adding to workload. And you're able to do it in a calm manner that you're not going to forget everything, and you're going to be able to present your best self rather than a panic, trying to grab everything kind of like representation.
And yeah, I should say, well, on that notice period here in Wales, Estyn give 10 working days, so 2 weeks notice before an inspection. And and Gareth here has commented in as well from Wales, saying Wales have done this. The narrative is still around what grade we are, despite the change. And so it is a long way to go. And I think some things will always stick. Certainly, the complaints procedure there is interesting, because for a organisation that's all about accountability and challenge, there have been a lot of stories about whether Ofsted can be challenged and how to challenge them this week. This year, sorry, should I say. Brent, what are your thoughts on some of these recommendations that the Association for Head Teachers are making?
Yeah, I think it's a stepping stone. I think it's a start. I think it's a start of the conversation, much like many other things we're seeing in Ofsted. I think head teachers take an inordinate amount of pressure. One of the things I like about that is that inspection at trust level. Head teachers now, sometimes there are things they're being judged on that they really have no control over. Same as us with exam results with the students. I don't think it's fair, because they have no control over trust policies. They have no control over the finances of the trust. And I actually think that we probably need an Ofsted inspection separately for trust organisations, because the lack of governance and the lack of accountability at trust level, I think, is one of the failures of the academy system, because you're picking on hardworking head teachers who have got operating with one hand tied behind their back. I know that as a former governor who's seen a transition from a local authority school to a trust, small trust, to a large multi-academy trust. And I can tell you the massive difference between accountability, the bigger the trust gets and the more important the CEO gets, that unfortunately it's the little people back in the school, the individual teachers and the individual head teachers who carry the can sometimes for things that are way out of their control. So I think that is excellent for the head teachers union to protect head teachers, because we're losing 9% of them, and something needs to change quickly because they need more support. Let's be honest about that. I think the graded judgments, absolutely, the country needs to be weaned off this. Those banners need to be taken down. And this idea, we need to stop using the language of good or outstanding. We need ourselves to, again, think that we don't replicate the language of Ofsted. We should basically just ignore it, in that sense of we don't use the gradings any longer. Because what is a good school? Ofsted might say a school is a good school. Actually, is it really a good school in certain aspects of what you would judge a school as being good as? So I believe it's a starting point. I just think it could go a bit further, but this is the opening gambit, I would suggest.
Fantastic. Now we're going to move on to our last story, and it is quite a big story. There've been a lot of news going around on this one. So our final story of the weekend is the Michaela prayer ban. Catherine Berbelsing has been doing the rounds, doing interviews, talking about how the ban restored calm and order after threats, in her word. 2-day High Court judicial review about this incident. It's a really tough one, hard to unpick where and which parts are going for it. It seems like a head teacher has made some decisions about how to do something in the school and has maybe fallen foul of some laws around what you can and can't do, I guess. So I'm going to come to Lianne first of all. This is a really interesting story in the news at the moment.
Yeah, I think children need to be given a little bit of free choice when it comes to religion and how you carry out your religion. So reading into the article seemed that the free choice was being kind of put upon other children, maybe of the same religion. So maybe there's like a gap for PSHE there and for understanding that you can carry out your religion in the way that you would like to, as opposed to kind of banning it completely.
And I'm gonna, Hannah, this is a challenge that I imagine many head teachers could face now through making decisions. Do you think there's enough awareness within the teaching profession of what can and what can't be done and what could be open to legal challenge?
No, I don't think as teachers that we're kind of given that guidance. It is kind of this kind of murky water as to what schools can impose and what they can't. But it was quite interesting reading the article. It was saying about kind of it got quite bad that kids were doing bomb threats and stuff to try and disrupt things. And so obviously, although Michaela's like put in this high esteemed, there's obviously issues that have arisen, and that this is the consequences that they've tried to do. So obviously that it's potentially a knee-jerk reaction to some of the kind of extreme things that have been happening beforehand. But it's one of those that is it punishing all for the few, as opposed to kind of finding this middle ground where everyone's allowed to do what they want to in a safe environment that works for all of them. I think it's that knee-jerk reaction, isn't it? I guess that's what they're known for, being strict. That it's like, right, well, if nobody's doing it, if it's not going to be done in a safe way.
And I think one of the bits there you pull up on it, and certainly in the opinion piece you can see on the top of the screen there, the decision by Britain's strictest head, and so we get this is a newsworthy story because maybe the head teacher has decided to be a newsworthy person. Certainly lots of comments on it, and we even have the education secretary weighing in and sort of saying, praising the school and praising the head teacher. There's a real challenge here, I think, to unpick what's going on, but certainly the school's reputation isn't helping them at the moment. Brent, what are your thoughts on this story?
Well, where do I start? I respect the fact that somebody is trying to defend their ethos, but I think they've gone way too far. There's no secular school in the UK. The 1988 Education Act makes that clear. There's collective worship, collective Christian worship, ironically. So if they want to change the law, then the government needs to change the law. Gillian Keegan needs to stop then lecturing schools, and Ofsted need to stop judging schools on British values if their flagship school, which seems to be given preferential treatment, let's be honest about it, is allowed to do what it wants. It's allowed to do what it wants when it comes to its curriculum. It's allowed to do what it wants when it comes to this. I am sick and tired of a rule for one and a rule for another and then a rule for the rest of us. It's a classic example of what we've seen during COVID. It's a classic example here. It's this culture wars. I'm really sorry. I think they've got this fundamentally wrong. I think it's fundamentally against human rights. It's fundamentally against human rights legislation. And that's why it's in the High Court. It could have been handled a lot better. It could have been handled a lot more subtly, because it's Newtonian principles. From a person whose background went that my ancestors were banned from their faith, it drove us to be educated on the hillsides. It didn't stop us practicing our faith during penal times, and it will not stop people now. It will have a Newtonian principle of equal and opposite force, which then calls into question, is that actually what these individuals want? Is that what Cathal Berbenson actually wants as part of this culture wars nonsense? I really have serious questions about the suitability of running a school when you're banning children from quiet, reflective prayer. I have serious concerns about the situation of our country, that we are actually having a head teacher allowing themselves to then say, of course, this caused a reaction. Of course, it's going to cause a reaction. Of course, it caused a reaction. That's probably, you have to say to yourself, how would it not cause a reaction? So I'm disappointed.
And I think, there's news even coming in today about this, about the students. As you say, you bring up culture wars there and these things in an area or in a world where nuance is important. It doesn't seem that a school that maybe at times takes a firm line is going to be able to provide that nuance and understanding and bringing people together if you're holding a firm line, Brent.
But you pick your battles. Would she do that with other religions? She knows the context of the area of which she works in. She knew that this was going to cause a reaction. So this is about management for me. It's about suitability of management. You work and you compromise. Schools are shared spaces. Absolutely, I get that. But we've come to understand that we tolerate, as part of our British values, people with differences of opinion. And therein lies that's what lies this. This is basically dictatorial. We're not a dictatorial country. We're not a country which dictates, how people practice their religion. We've had that before. That doesn't work. So I think it's fundamentally against actually British values, which we are judged on in schools. So I think, unfortunately, if this judgment is going to be a test case, and it's quite a serious test case, because I think it's more. There's more going on in this than just in education. There's definitely more going on in this. And that's when you see politicians getting involved. There's a bigger game going on. And when I look at where this could go, it worries me. It really worries me about the direction of travel on this.
No,
and it distracts from what's really going on in education. It really does distract from what's really needed in education as well.
Sorry, Lianne, you had a point there.
I think there's a missing piece there of the school reaching out into the community. And finding someone within the community to help integrate that part of the students into the daily life of the school, because I think you can do it. And there are a lot of people in communities in our country that would be on the positive side of putting that into a school day, a daily routine of a school.
Now, the bit that I want to kind of finish on for this story, and removing the school, removing the head teacher that this is, and this idea that head teachers now, you could, and I imagine I could, maybe not in this situation would I make those decisions, but if I were a head teacher, I could find myself in a situation where I am splashed all over the head, the newspapers for making a poor decision of what I thought was right. Now, as I asked before, the head teacher has had to make a decision here. Is there enough support for head teachers then in making these incredibly complicated decisions, whether it be about religion, or about something like the trans rights within schools? Is there enough guidance? Is there enough support? Is there enough knowledge for head teachers to even be able to navigate this, Lianne?
I think knowledge is where maybe they fell down, maybe not government guidance, but like I said before, community guidance from people out there, again, like with Ofsted inspectors, with the right knowledge. And we talk about subject knowledge a lot in teaching, with the right subject knowledge, with the right background to advise in the best interest of a school. I think it is out there. You have to know where to go to find it.
Right, now we are going to finish off with our shows of the week, and it has been a really varied week on Teachers Talk Radio. So a lot of different topics, a lot of different shows. We'll come round to Brent first. This will go round the other way. And Brent, what was your show of the week?
Yeah, I really enjoyed Ray's Monday night show on the neurodiverse educators. She had Amy, which was her guest on, a neurodivergent educator. And as somebody who's waiting for the diagnosis of their neurodivergence, which I'm sure it is definitely there, it was quite interesting to, sort of how education is tricky for people with neurodivergence, and that, yes, there's a lot of focus on the children, but there's no accommodation or no understanding for, the amount of staff members who have neurodivergence, and that maybe the way our schools are set up at the moment is not exactly very helpful towards people with neurodivergence. So I thought it was a very interesting listen to. And secondly, it was a 50-50 between that and joy in school. So I would mention as well, Nathan, your show was on my listening list, so I will get to listening to that, because I love the idea of we need more joy in schools as well. So I thought I'd cheat there and get two in.
Please, more than welcome to put mine in there, Brent. Hannah, what was your show of the week?
Mine was that show. Mine was your show, which was with Ben Kingsley Hughes on his new book, Why Children Need Joy. And I think it is that kind of thing, isn't it? That we've spent so much time over the last few years researching the science of how students learn, and it's all this focus on kind of embedding learning and recalling and this knowledge-rich curriculum, which are all really good because the kids are developing and they're learning more. But we need to remember the joy, and it is like the joy is the bit that you remember from when you were at school. Those bits of joy are going to be those moments that last forever. And I was chatting to someone the other day that it's when we had snow here, and it's like, if we get a snow day, children are going to be online learning. They're not going to remember that joy of a snow day and being out there kind of playing and what you can get from joy. And we need to not forget that actually that's a really important part of their learning as well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you.
Great show.
Lianne, your show of the week.
Mine was Pose, Pause, Pounce and Bounce, and it was the Friday Twilight show, and it was about school dogs, having a dog in school. And I always remember years ago I visited a school, and on the organisational chart there was a dog. So I think dogs make great listeners, dogs make great reading partners. There's science to show that they can bring anxiety down. So I think any school that's willing to have a dog in is a good place to work at.
My show of the week was Monday, Tom Rogers, Teaching Tips for 2024. I think it was one of those things that Teachers Talk Radio do really well, real actionable tips, things I could take away from real teachers. And it was great to hear Kate Jones back on the Teachers Talk Radio airwaves again. So it was fantastic. Well, from us here at Teachers Talk Radio, we've just got one comment coming in there from Teach Physics UK. Brent, I'm not sure secular schools are required to set aside resources and staffing for individual religions. Not saying a prayer for a few hours is survivable, is it not? I think, there is a whole bombshell that we do not have time for to pick up there.
Yeah, short answer to that is it's the 1988 law. It's the law, and if the law gets changed, Parliament changes that law, not a head teacher at Parliament. So Gillian Keegan needs to go back to Parliament and say, put it in the manifesto, put that down in the manifesto for the next general election, get elected, and then change the law. And then we'll have Catherine Berblesing able to have a secular school and call it a secular school, because it isn't. And currently at the moment you have to do collective worship, whether that's right or wrong. People want to change that, but let's go through the democratic system in doing that.
And this conversation will continue because later on today, 6 o'clock, we've got Catherine Berblesing on Teachers Talk Radio. So if you have your questions, start tweeting them or Instagramming them, or, well, however you want to contact us, and let us know your thoughts and, keep this conversation going. Thank you, everyone. Enjoy what's left of the weekend, and we'll see you all next week.